Pro Group Management. Workers' comp that works for you.
Welcome to Nevada Newsmakers. On the broadcast today, the Speaker of the Nevada Assembly, Steve Yeager, joins us for the whole show on an all-new Nevada Newsmakers.
Welcome to Story County, where history meets innovation, and a pioneering spirit continues to shape our future. At the heart of the Tahoe Reno Industrial Center, we power the future with global leaders in technology and manufacturing, driving progress that reaches far beyond our county lines. From advanced manufacturing to tech innovation, our industries are creating thousands of quality careers, fueling a vibrant economy that benefits every Nevadan. But it's more than just growth. Our community is our foundation, supporting families, empowering local initiatives, and creating a place where everyone belongs. Be part of a legacy built on bold ideas and boundless possibilities. Join us in building a brighter future right here in Story County. Story County, helping build Nevada's future.
Here on 7 at 7, we're bringing you the local headlines in just 7 minutes.
We've got you covered in the morning, evening, and for all breaking news in between and as it happens.
Life is busy, and we don't waste your time. Join us for local news now streaming on our YouTube page.
This is Nevada Newsmakers with host Sam Shad, a no-holds-barred political forum. Now, from the Nevada Newsmakers broadcast headquarters, here is Sam Shad.
And back on Nevada Newsmakers, coming to you from Carson City of the Nevada Builders Alliance. Pleasure to welcome to the program, sir, to kick things off on our legislative coverage, the Speaker of the Nevada Assembly, Steve Yeager. Thank you so much for doing this.
It's always nice to be here, Sam.
Well, I appreciate it, especially at 7 o'clock in the morning.
It is early, but you got to get important things done first thing in the morning.
Well, thank you, sir. Let's start out with, perhaps an obvious question, but where can you and the governor work together? Because everybody talks about the divisions, but what things do you see that you can work together on?
Yeah, great question. I mean, divisions are always going to be covered, right? They're more interesting for the public. I always say it's why when you drive down the street, no one stops to look at traffic flowing nicely. They stop to look at traffic accidents. It's a human nature sort of thing. But I think there are a lot of places we can agree. When you think about what the governor talked about in the State of the State, we tend to agree on what the problems in the state are, right? It's housing, it's healthcare, it's education performance, it's economic development. And I think when you can agree on what those problems are, that means you can reach solutions. We're not always going to agree. He's got some ideas that we probably don't like. We have some ideas that he doesn't like. But I think that gives us a good place to start from. And in fact, when you look at last session, right, the coverage is always about the bills that were vetoed. And certainly the governor vetoed a lot of bills, but there were a lot of bills that he signed, probably numbering over 1,000 plus bills that were signed. So most things really are things that we can work on. We just get caught up sometimes on those things that are really contentious and in the media, but I think there are plenty of issues that we can work on this session, and then we haven't even talked yet about sort of the federal overlay and what's going on there, and that's going to have potentially a huge impact on the state, and I think he's interested in making sure we mitigate some of that as well.
Yes, and I think that not only just here at the Nevada legislature and with the governor, but also, for example, the United States Supreme Court. It is amazing how many laws are passed and approved at the Supreme Court versus the ones that get all the publicity,
right?
Where there's a lot going on. All right, so you brought it up. Let's go to it. Medicaid funding. If that were to be cut 100%, of course, that would be an incredible tragedy. What are you hearing in terms of what potentially could be cut? Because $1.9 billion would not be something we could absorb.
No, definitely not. We don't have that kind of money sitting around. I say we don't have a printing press in the basement where we can print money. We don't have money trees out in the Capitol lawn. So that kind of cut would be devastating. You know, it's been interesting. I think I've been raising red flags, as some of my colleagues, that this could be disastrous for the state of Nevada. I'm a little disappointed that some of my Republican colleagues have tried to downplay what this could mean. And in fact, some say, well, Medicaid's not going to get cut. It's just not going to happen. We saw the Congressional Budget Office come out with a memo saying the national Republicans cannot accomplish the budget cuts they want to do without cutting Medicare and Medicaid. It's not possible. It's a big part of the budget. So I think this is a real thing. You know, in terms of Medicaid itself, the expansion population, where Brian Sandoval, the very first Republican governor to expand Medicaid, I mean, that would be $1.9 billion if they decided to cut that. But there are a lot of other things they could cut. Prescription drug protections. We just enacted a new hospital provider tax where hospitals essentially tax themselves. The money goes up to the federal government and comes back like 20 or 30-fold. We're using all that money for mental health services in the state. If that goes away, and it could go away, it's going to further decimate our mental health services, and especially youth mental health. So I think these things are real. And in fact, we know they are because there was a vote that was taken to do just that in the House. Now, there's a long process in the federal government, but I think for us as a state, like, we can't just bury our heads in the sand and say, well, everything's going to turn out okay. We are not in normal times. This is not a normal federal administration. And so, you know, I think we have to be ready to the extent we can to talk about what that's going to mean for the state and what we might be able to do about it. And unfortunately, the answer is not a heck of a lot because we just don't have that kind of money sitting around.
Well, it's also interesting to observe as each day goes by, let alone as each week goes by, the reversals on some of the things that the president has tried to accomplish, or people working for the president have tried to accomplish, that have been reversed very quickly.
Right.
Because politically they're just not palatable, and we have elections coming up in less than 2 years, which is frightening to say, but that's truly the case, and people want to get reelected. So if you suddenly, I don't think there's any chance you're going to cut Medicare. I don't think that Medicaid, perhaps some of the expansion portion, but I don't think that you're going to see states like Nevada getting a $1.9 billion cut.
I sure hope not, because we can't absorb that, and it really would kick a lot of people off their health insurance. The only thing I'll say about this administration is I want to agree with you on that, Sam, that we won't see these cuts, but we're just in very unprecedented times right now. You know, Trump said he was going to do various things during the campaign. People laughed it off and said he's not being serious. He's just being himself. He's exaggerating. We're not seeing that happen. What we're seeing this time at the federal level is those guardrails of the more rational people that could rein him in are no longer there. His administration and his advisors are people, one, that don't understand how government works, which I think is a lot of the chaos. They have an idea and they just do it without talking to anybody and figuring out how to implement it. So I'm nervous about that. I just think we're in really unprecedented times, and I certainly hope that I'm wrong about that. But I've seen enough of what's happened that I'm nervous, not just about Medicaid and healthcare, but all kinds of other things that the federal government does to help the Nevada budget.
For example?
For example, would be Department of Education. I mean, I guess we're getting yanked back and forth on that one now. Either it's going away, it's staying, it's going away, it's staying. But, you know, the Department of Education, if you look at our state education budget, more than 50% of it is federal monies, right? And that's you know, special education funding is a big one. And then you talk about, like, what does it mean for higher education, for student loan funding, for Pell Grants, for research that's being done. I mean, all across the spectrum, when you look at our federal budget, I think 37% of Nevada's budget comes from the federal government. And healthcare and education are the biggest portions of those. And those are places where we're already not doing a great job. We're already underfunded. And so when you talk about taking that funding away, I mean, it could really be a disaster for the state. And Trump certainly seems intent to get rid of the Department of Education.
Right, but so was Ronald Reagan.
So was Ronald Reagan.
And we saw how that worked out. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, every Republican has wanted to get rid of the Department of Education. One of the things that I've heard is that if you were able to get rid of the Department of Education, the functions would go to other departments. And so therefore the funding streams, et cetera, would still continue. It would just be that you could say, I got rid of the Department of Education, but the functions of it really wouldn't go away.
I hope that's the case. I mean, there will be.
Are you optimistic?
No, I'm not.
Okay, all right.
I'm really not.
No, that's fair enough.
What I'm seeing at the federal level, I'm not optimistic, right? Because what I see is either incompetence, where we're seeing something proposed and pulled back, or it's a purposeful attempt at chaos, right? To just yank people back and forth. And we've seen this playbook before, not here in this country for a long time, but we've seen it in other countries, where you create so much chaos and so much disruption and uncertainty and stress that then when you decide to enact a policy that really is pretty bad, it doesn't look quite as bad because it's not as bad as what you first introduced. And I can't figure out, I mean, I'm not going to try to psychoanalyze Donald Trump. I think he's a narcissist in every sense of the word. But what he's doing and what he's proposing and the people around him I think are going to have disastrous implications, not just for our state, but for our country. So that's what keeps me up at night when you wake up thinking about these things that are going on. Like, this country is turning in a direction that I think is dangerous, very dangerous for us.
What's interesting, though, is that Speaker Johnson has to reach out to Democrats to get some of the things that he needs passed. Budget ceiling, for example, is going to probably be another one of those. John Thune is not part of, I hate to use the phrase, but the MAGA movement. He's a much more stable character. I think at one point I would have thought that he would run for president himself. So you do have some stabilizing forces there and some people that are realizing, hey, we have to work with the other party. We do not have this huge mandate to be able to do just whatever we want. So I am optimistic that, as time goes by, a lot of noise to get things done. Great campaign for 2 years from now. We try to get all this done, but we were blocked. So we'll see how that works out. Film tax credits. What do you think about this concept? And it's a lot of money.
The concept's really exciting. I mean, who wouldn't want to bring Hollywood to Nevada, to Las Vegas, to Reno? I mean, that would be huge for us. And I think it really would help with the diversification of the economy, which we talk about every single year I've ever been on the show and talked about this. But it's a huge number. It's a huge ask. We've never been asked for that kind of money in film tax credits.
80 million a year?
I think it's over 100 million at this point with the amendments. But, 80 million, 100 million, and it's over a term of years, 13, 14, 15 years. It's a lot of money. For me, I like the idea of it, but it's a couple questions I have. Number one, can we afford it? The budget we have right now makes me skeptical about that. And then number two, is it worth it, right? Because when you look at film tax credits around the country, they don't return a lot of money directly for the film tax credit. I think Georgia did a study and it was 20 cents on the dollar that came back to the state. But the way it's pitched to us is, well, you got to take into account all these jobs and the diversification of the economy and the fact that we're going to have a new industry here. Is that worth something? Of course it is. But in my mind, is it worth the amount of outlay that the state would have to make for that? And I don't know the answer to that yet. I've got to really dig into that analysis. I mean, every economic analysis we get is a rosy economic analysis, so they wouldn't give it to us. But what matters to me is that land they're talking about in Summerlin, something's going to be developed there. And the question for me is what is the delta between what would be developed and if we did this film tax credit? And that has to make sense. So I haven't really dived into that yet, but I think it's a pretty big lift.
I've joked on the show that you guys should contact Tyler Perry and get the information on how he's made things work in Georgia, because he's been incredibly successful. But you say that Georgia has not made.
Georgia did an economic analysis that was commissioned by the state, and it showed that they actually returned very little in terms of what was promised in their film tax credit.
Isn't that a huge red flag then?
It is a huge red flag, and when I saw that came out originally, I said, well, that's kind of the end of the conversation. But the argument with Las Vegas is that we're a different place, we're a different community. Our proximity to Hollywood and to Los Angeles, I think, makes us more attractive than Georgia, but that's certainly concerning when you look at that economic analysis. Now, to their credit, the proponents of the bill have said, yes, this is an economic analysis that happened, it's accurate, but here's why Nevada is different. So that's what that's the hurdle they have to climb right now. How are we different enough from Georgia that it would make sense for us, when I don't believe it makes sense for Georgia, though they continue to extend their film tax credit there?
Yes, and the product that comes out is exceptional. But yes, that is a big flashing red sign there. Let's take a break and come back. More with the Speaker of the Nevada Assembly, Steve Yeager, after this timeout.
Welcome to the Ahern Boutique Hotel, where luxury and warmth come together in the heart of Las Vegas.
We take pride in offering a one-of-a-kind experience for both locals and tourists.
Join us for handcrafted cocktails and an unforgettable experience.
Joel's Chop House, the perfect place to savor views of the Las Vegas Strip.
Satisfy your cravings at the Ahern Chocolate Shop.
No smoking,
no resort fees, and the parking is always free. The Ahern Luxury Boutique Hotel is your home away from home.
As you know, Reno is booming. Toll's development company is helping it grow with insightful design and development, building community with every project, adding beauty, adding excitement, emphasizing our shared humanity. Reno is becoming bigger. Toll's development is helping it become better, more livable, more enjoyable. To learn more, go to tollsdevelopment.com. tollsdevelopment.com.
Fantastic cocktails and delicious food. It's a good time to eat. Over 500 hot slots, plus electronic table games.
It's a good time to play.
Player rewards and big-time jackpots.
It's a good time to win.
Ooh, your good times at Tamarack.
Like a traditional handmade basket, retail is woven into the fabric of life in Nevada. From big box to mom and pop, retail supports our communities in countless ways. Jobs for the disabled, team uniforms for kids, help for the elderly, and so much more. Retail employs over 1 in 10 workers. Retail supports Nevada, and we support retail.
RANNV.org.
This is Nevada Newsmakers.
And back on Nevada Newsmakers, we continue our conversation with Steve Yeager. He is the Speaker of the Nevada Assembly. Hiring laid-off federal workers. Where does that idea come from, and why does it make sense when we have a relatively high unemployment rate? I mean, realistically, it's really not that high, but it's high enough. Why should laid-off federal workers get more opportunity than Nevada laid-off workers already?
Well, I don't see it as more opportunity. I just think sort of an equal shot, right? Better information about how to get these jobs. I mean, this is a big deal for the state, because I don't think anyone foresaw that there would be what appear to be indiscriminate federal firings. We can call them displaced workers, but they're fired workers is essentially what they are. And there are a lot of them that live here in Nevada, and so I think the idea is kind of twofold. Number one, we should want to get them into state jobs. I think it's not always clear how our state jobs align with federal jobs, because those are different hiring processes. But really the inspiration for that is the governors around the country of both parties have seen what's happening and said, we need to do a better job of streamlining so we can get these folks into positions, folks that are already qualified. Like, let's get rid of some of that red tape so we're ready to hire them right away. And they've been pretty successful in other states in doing that. They've generally done it, the governors have done it by executive order. Of course, we can enact legislation, but it's going to have to go through the process, and it's going to have to be signed by the governor. So we are really calling on Governor Lombardo to use executive orders to try to relax whatever barriers are there that just don't make sense for federal workers with tons of experience. It's not like you're hiring somebody who's brand new into the workforce. So we want to make sure we get them into these jobs, because I think every person here that's unemployed, whether they're a state worker or a federal worker, they're going to be utilizing state resources until they find a job. So we have vacancy rates, we have jobs available. Let's try to get them in there as quick as possible.
Are you having conversations at this point already with the governor, or just the governor's staff?
I've really only talked to the governor's chief of staff at this point a couple of times, sort of waiting for the governor to engage on issues. I think part of the problem is his bills are not out yet, his 5 priority bills. So I think once those come out, discussions will kind of start in earnest about what's in there, because each of those bills really is probably like 30 bills in one,
sure,
with a lot of money attached. So there's going to be a lot of work to be done there, and I think those conversations will start then. I have expressed to his chief of staff, though, that we are going through the legislative process. We are bringing back some bills or concepts that were vetoed last time. We've tried to be mindful of the governor's veto messages in terms of why he vetoed those things. I mean, we don't want things to be vetoed. We want them to be signed. So I have asked if there can be better communication coming from the governor's office this year about things they're concerned about. Are there ways that we can amend bills that he can sign them? If it's a no, and it's always going to be a no, no matter what, for instance, gun safety legislation, governor's just not going to sign that. Like, just tell us that and we'll move on. But I think there are plenty of things in the middle, like 75 plus vetoes last time. 30 of those didn't have to get vetoed. I think better communication would have helped. So I have affirmatively asked to get that input. I haven't received that yet, but they know these bills are moving through the process, so I'm hopeful that we're going to get some guidance, because we really do want these bills to be enacted.
How does the election cycle play into this? Because the governor is up for election. There were a lot of people that voted for him that were pleased that there were 75 vetoes. He was applauded for it. How much does the election cycle play into this conversation here at the legislature?
I mean, elections are always on people's minds, right? But I think we've done a good job as a legislature. It's time to get down to business. It's time to leave that behind. We've got real issues that we need to solve. We've got to work together. I don't know where the governor is and his team. I'm sure they're thinking about his reelection campaign. But
I would think so.
I think so. But these things we're talking about, they're things that matter to everybody, no matter what side of the aisle you might be on.
Okay, so pick the top three that if you could rejigger from the ones that he vetoed. Which ones?
Yeah, I think you start with housing right away, right? We passed some legislation that I think would have helped with housing to kind of crack down on corporate landlords, to give renters a little bit more protection in terms of getting evicted, to give tenants like more clear information about what their rent's going to be. The very modest 10% rent cap on seniors and people with disabilities. That's a huge number, 10% year over year. Those are 4 bills that were vetoed. I think those all would have helped. And I know they would have helped because I've been down to the homeless corridor in the city of Las Vegas, and they have an uptick in seniors and elderly folks who are now homeless because they couldn't afford the rent. They're on fixed incomes. Those are like 4 things in housing. Like, those aren't just good for us. Those are good for everybody, right? And so that's that. I would say on housing, and then education. I think we did make pretty big strides last time. It's going to take time.
$2 billion plus.
$2 billion plus. It's going to take time to see results from that. I mean, people that expect year to year there's going to be some massive improvement. This is not how the world works. Like, the money is just getting into the classroom. But I think we can build on that. I mean, that's not a partisan issue. Maybe when you get to the using public dollars for private schools, that's a partisan issue. But public education needing to be better in this state, that's a pretty bipartisan issue. You talk to anybody at doors, they're going to tell you that's important, and whether they're a Democrat, Republican, or not partisan.
Okay, corporations buying up businesses. I mean, that's been a theme that came from our congressional delegation when I was back there in last September. Obviously, it's an ongoing theme here in Nevada as well. But isn't that the way our economy works?
It is now. It doesn't have to be. And the bill that we enacted last time.
Why shouldn't businesses be able to buy housing and then either resell it at a profit or rent it out? I mean, you look at what happened with the Cosmopolitan. When that property was sold, when the corporation got rid of it, they gave everybody $5,000 bonuses as a thank you. I mean,
that's right.
They weren't corporate villains, I don't think, at that point.
No, but the landlords are not giving people $5,000 bonuses. What they're doing is buying up the houses, driving up the prices, or jacking up the rents, right? Because they're just, I think there aren't enough restrictions
but isn't
on them.
that the way our economy works?
It is, but I don't think it has to be when it comes to housing. And I think there's a good reason in housing to put a limit on that, right? I mean, we don't want a situation where 50 to 75% of our available housing stock is owned by corporations. That's not good. But the bill we tried to do last session, it didn't even say no to that. It just said, can we start to get a handle on how much is owned by corporate landlords, right? We wanted to do basically a registry so we could figure out the extent of the problem. That was vetoed. Now, I think the governor said, I believe he said in his State of the State, he wants to start looking at that. So, I'm glad that we're finally on the same page. But Dina Neal had a bill to do that, and it got vetoed. So, I think that's one where it's never bad for us to have more information to make better decisions. But we have to do something. I mean, we can't just say to constituents, well, sorry, landlords own all the properties, and they're jacking up the rents, and it's capitalism, and they can do that. So good luck being homeless. I mean, no one wants that, right? And I'm being a little facetious.
Well,
but
yes, but I mean, you can't price things beyond the market.
No, you can't. You can't.
So I mean, there's a balance there. If if I want to own 2 houses, is that okay? If I want to own 10 houses, is that okay? Where do we draw the line?
Yeah, and I think that's a realistic question of where to draw the line. I know that we can't draw a line unless we have good information about what's happening out there, and we don't have that at the moment.
All right, let's take another break, and we'll be right back.
Pro Group Management specializes in providing industries with the necessary components to satisfy and exceed workers' comp requirements. Every business has unique needs and specific regulations. Pro Group Management stays ahead of the curve, providing up-to-date services to keep your industry in top form. Discover how we simplify your tasks, improve efficiency, and reduce expense to keep you moving in a positive direction. Pro Group Management, workers' comp that works for you.
Save money and take transit. Did you know you can ride the bus all day for less than what it would cost you for a gallon of gas? Plan your trip now by going to rtcwashoe.com.
The trucking industry is the most resilient link in the supply chain. And for over 90 years, the Nevada Trucking Association has been the voice for the men and women in the trucking industry. From Carson City to Washington, D.C., we advocate for policies to protect our trucking companies and keep commerce flowing. Because Nevada's and America's prosperity is tied to trucks. There's nothing without trucking.
A power line is more than a power line. It's maintaining the bottom line for small businesses. It's keeping the assembly line moving for our workforce. For our brightest minds, it's meeting a deadline. It's on the front line with our heroes. And on the sidelines of the biggest games. It's a direct line to our loved ones. And it's a lifeline for the most vulnerable. There's a lot on the line.
Carson Valley Inn, it's your place for the good times. Carson Valley Inn.
This is Nevada Newsmakers.
And back on Nevada Newsmakers with Steve Yeager, the Speaker of the Nevada Assembly. You have eyes on other jobs?
Well, this job, I can tell you, is like full-time times 3. So, during the session, I'm always just focused on let's get through the session. And I think this session in particular is going to take all of that skill set. I could run for the Assembly one more time, because remember, the first time I ran in 2014, I lost. So this is my 5th session. So we'll see what 2026 brings. I could run for the Assembly. There are, of course, other opportunities out there. But I never make that decision during the legislative session, because it's a very stressful decision. And I do know one thing: no matter what I end up doing, whether it's coming back here, running for something else, or doing none of those things, I'm going to continue to be involved in the community and try to make this state a better place.
Thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me.
You're welcome, and we'll be right back.
Each day, the Children's Advocacy Alliance partners with leaders, legislators, and families across Nevada to improve children's health, education, economic well-being, and safety. We recognize Nevada will be no better than the state of its children. Be a part of this change. Be a supporter of the Children's Advocacy Alliance. For more information, go to caanv.org.
Imagine a magical garden that feeds Carson City's hungry and homeless, teaches our high school students agriculture, creates hanging floral displays to beautify downtown, and yet charges nothing. It's not magic. It's the Greenhouse Project. It's real, it's growing, and it needs your help. Go online to carsоncitygreenhouse.org so together we can grow it forward.
The Nevada Builders Alliance has been protecting the interests of the construction industry for over 50 years. Our programs save members thousands of dollars every year and allow them to provide much-needed benefits to their employees. Our industry also allows Nevada to grow. If you're thinking about a career in the construction industry, reach out. And if you haven't thought of a career in construction, what are you waiting for? We are the Nevada Builders Alliance.
Thanks for watching Nevada Newsmakers, coming to you from Carson City, from the headquarters of the Nevada Builders Alliance. We'll see you on the next broadcast. Thanks for watching.